no guest, no book, no topic, no problem. It's just me and the gang, so let's talk on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
And I am the aforementioned old white guy. And we don't have a guest today. Well, we have guests, and they're wonderful. But nobody knew. They all said, we're not doing this ever again. We were offended, and you'll just have to do it yourself.
What?
Well, John Eldridge was going to be on, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, but he's going to be
What
on
did
next.
you say to him?
He's going to be on next week. Why are you making this like World War III? You know?
I'm paranoid. That's why.
He's just
And we're going
sick,
to talk
man.
about that in just a minute, by the way.
World War III?
No, yeah, as a matter of fact.
Ooh, I got to get my bomb sound effect right.
Matthew Porter's here. Matthew does want to rise up on wings like eagles, but later he'd still like to curl up and nap like a grizzly bear.
If possible.
That wasn't in the text. You know that.
Is that not?
No.
No, it might have been in the
I
message.
mean, you put it in. Yeah, maybe the message. Our producer, Jinx, is working hard in the little glass booth. Jinx may look like a young Ted Nugent, but Jinx loves guns more than Ted does.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the grizzly bear needs to look out.
Our video director and one-man IT department, John Myers, is in the tech bunker. Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life, and George enjoys coffee, golf, and the gentle sound of someone donating stocks and other securities to Key Life.
I like cash register sounds too.
You're romantic. I like that.
I think we have a sound effect for that. I think we have a cha-ching kind of
Yeah,
thing.
have
Yes,
one
we
of
do.
we just
As
to
a
push
matter.
something randomly and see what it is?
Yeah.
No.
No, it could be the gun going off.
Or the cow?
And Kathy Wyatt is the soft feminine side of the program. At the marriage supper of the Lamb, look for Kathy. She'll bring the cupcakes.
That'd be great.
You know, if we talked about donating stocks again, the cow sound would work just fine.
Cash cow?
Right. Well, if you have a few stocks hanging around, send them. You'll make Dr.
There you go. I told you we
See?
had it.
Dr. Bingham would rise up and call you blessed. Guys, we really don't have a guest. I think we're going to have John on a little bit later, right?
Just go with the program. You keep saying we don't have a guest. I think people are going to say, okay, we might as well turn this off.
Well, they do that anyway regularly. So I thought we would, I thought at least we'd start. Matthew has given me a list of about, 20 or 30 subjects?
At least.
It's not that we don't have anything to talk about.
Lots to talk about.
But I've been thinking a lot recently, and probably because of the book that came out that I wrote, but this is not going to be a program about that book. It's called Talk the Walk, How to Be Right Without Being Insufferable. And I didn't write the book for this reason, but I've had several people in the interviews I've done around the country say, this was a good time to write this book because these themes are kinds of things that we're dealing with every day on a variety of subjects, and particularly in terms of politics. I'm an old guy. I've been doing this for a very long time. In the early years, I was in broadcast news. And so I've met a lot of politicians, and I've listened to a lot of politicians, and I've engaged in a lot of political talk and discussion. But we're living in an age where that is almost impossible unless it's with your wife. You know, you bring up politics and people go ballistic. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I think social media is sometimes a sewer that allows people to say horrible and divisive and angry and hateful and demeaning things without having to face the person to whom they're saying it. George Bingham, who you know is the president of Key Life, has a rule around here. If you're ticked with somebody, you can't send them an email on our in-house email. George says, get off your fanny and go to that person and sit down and talk. That's wise. But it'd be wise in a lot of other areas, too. You know, I have a tendency, as you know, I'm a Republican, and I'm very conservative. No, more conservative than you just thought when I said that. and to the right of Genghis Khan and all of that. And I voted for a person that a whole lot of people hate. Now, I don't worship at his altar, but I voted for our president and am reasonably glad with some of the things that he's done. That's the first time I've said that in a long time, and certainly not publicly, because people go ballistic. And they've called that the Trump derangement syndrome. And as if it's not on the other side, too. You know, it's not just that people like me look at people like you who don't agree with me and I think you're crazy. You look at me and you don't agree with me and you think I'm crazy. Not only crazy, and this is the key, I'm evil or you're evil. And so the discussions get carried on in certain circles, which are discussions on why those people are evil and why we have to get rid of them. And it's as divisive and as angry and as hostile as anything I've ever seen. We're divided almost 50-50 in this nation. And you know, that's dangerous if you don't care what you say about somebody else. So how do you fix it? You know, and I'm going to throw out something here and then we'll talk about it, but this morning I've been reading the manuscript of a friend who's now in prison ministry, and he's a drunk. He's sober now, but occasionally falls into it again. He's an ordained Presbyterian minister, and as I read his book, I felt like I had lived his life with him. He's a great writer, and he didn't hold back anything, and he was totally honest. And then I realized that when he started speaking about other things, the church, people, friends, politics in his book, I was able to hear what he said. And I was thinking, what's going on here? Why is he able to say anything he wants and get away with it, and I can't without getting shot? And then I realized it was this reality that he knows existentially in his life, that he's a nobody, that he has screwed it up big time. He had a family with 4 children. He went through a divorce. He slept in the basement of the church, hugging his bottles of booze. He hurt so many people. I could just go on and on and on. Maybe if everybody in this country would become a drunk or do something really bad. You know, we get a lot of letters at Key Life. For some reason,
I think we're going to get a lot more.
Yeah, right, with money in them. and some people, you know, I irritate a lot of people. And because I am sanctified, I pray for those people that they get drunk at a party. People by those they admire and look up to. And in their drunken state, They confess every secret, every sin, every dark place in their lives. And the next morning, after they get over their hangover,
That would be afternoon.
they say, or the afternoon, they say,
I mean, that's what I heard.
I don't believe I said that. I think I like them a lot better. And I asked God to do that for those people. And he said, you're crazy. I'm not answering that kind of prayer. And I said, well, give them the hives or something. But it would be better if you made them drunk. So going back to what I said earlier about my friend's book that I've been reading this morning, and that it would be good if everybody in America would get plastered and do stupid things, then maybe we could talk. You know, and we're going to talk about it. I feel like I'm preaching now. I'm not going to do that, but you know what the problem is. The problem everywhere is not just leverage and power and money. It's just not mean people who are mean to the bone. The problem, dear friend, and don't let anybody tell you different, the problem is self-righteousness. I feel self-righteous in just saying that. And we'll talk about it when we come back. Don't you go anywhere. Welcome back to Steve Brown, etc. We are sitting around the table, and you have a place at our table, and we're just talking till something comes to mind. Actually, we're talking about self-righteousness. I wrote a book a number of years ago, and it was titled Things I've Learned Since I Knew Everything. And a lot of the titles were God's bigger than I thought he was, and human beings are worse than I thought they were, and I'm worse than I thought I was, and self-righteousness is more dangerous than I thought it was. And that's the hardest chapter I've ever had to write. I can't tell you how many times I started it and had to delete it and start it and delete it. You ever think about how a preacher preaches against self-righteousness without being self-righteous? And if you're a writer, how do you write about self-righteousness without being self-righteous?
Seems like entrapment.
Yeah, I think you get like a 30-minute pass.
It's insidious. You can't go there without playing that game. And so the best way, and it was the way that I did it, is a confession of just what I said. And then I said, you too. So let's deal with it and talk about it. Self-righteousness is going to kill us. It really is. And that's a shame, because the witness of the New Testament is designed, it's called pots of clay, so that we don't get credit, is designed. The good that I want to do, I don't do. And the evil I don't want to do, that's what I do. I am the chief of sinners. Those things are given to us to remedy self-righteousness so we can talk.
You know, and it's funny because the self-righteousness kind of goes hand in hand with the political discussions for Christians. And in case anybody possibly thinks this is like a newish kind of topic, I remember sitting right here talking to all of you guys back like in the late 90s when, I don't want to name names, but a certain president whose name rhymes with Bill Clinton had a little bit of
Hillary Clinton?
Do what?
Hillary Clinton? Rhymes?
Yeah, got into a little bit of a pickle. And
I do remember that. And we talked about self-righteousness.
And I remember what you're talking about. It's like, you know what? Of all the things that are going on that I don't like here, maybe the most offensive in my brain is the self-righteousness that all of a sudden is called forth from this group of people over all these things.
Oh, it's really, and it's an opportunity for Christians that incident with Bill Clinton, and he consistently is named one of the most popular people in the world. You know why? After he had gone through the trial in the Senate, had been acquitted, he was asked by a reporter, and I saw this incident. He was asked, "Are you going to forgive those people who have done this to you?" And he said, "Those who need forgiveness must forgive." Nice. And that was powerful. I used to say in churches, Bill Clinton drives me nuts. And people thought I was making a political statement, and they would start applauding. The Republicans would. And then I would think, I wish you hadn't done that, because what I'm going to say is not going to fill you.
Slow your roll.
He drives me nuts because he's given Christians such a wonderful opportunity to be self-righteous. And as soon as we do that, we lose our witness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so serious.
You know, one of the things that seems to stand out to me in the current division is those people that can talk across the aisle. I mean, there's so few of them.
That's true.
You know, the people that can do an interview with somebody and call them friend and dramatically disagree with them, but not have to push their point all the time and actually, you know, try and listen to the other side. I mean, it seems like such a rare thing that it becomes... for a Christian, it could become a witness in and of itself.
Oh, I agree with you. Do you know, one of the problems, you know, there may be, and this is my hope, that there are more people like that than you would believe.
Hopefully. Yeah.
But they don't increase ratings. It's the angry ones. It's the ones that accuse the other side of being evil that raise the ratings and sell the cars and the perfume and the booze. And the problem with our media is they know that. And so they're not going to go find a representative or a senator or somebody who's in a position in power in Washington who is kind and compassionate and reasonably humble. That doesn't raise ratings. There are people today who make their living by being self-righteous.
It seems like, you know, at some point in the past, maybe further past than what I'm really realizing or remembering, you know, there was arguments on both sides, logical, rhetorical, and somebody really brings it.
Passionate.
We are so past that.
I know.
It's now political. It's MMA. It's mixed martial arts. It's blood sport. You're not trying to win a point. You are trying to draw blood with every single statement and press conference. And like we've become civilized Romans. I think that's all it is.
It really is.
I just want to see somebody bleed.
It's going to kill us if we're not careful. Now that's all bad. No, actually, it's good if you're a Christian. There has never been a time when Christians have had more of an opportunity to be, well, Christian. Never than in our time. When it gets dark enough, a little light will do. And we're not such great shakes. And by knowing that and understanding that, it is such a contrast to the reality of our culture that it becomes quite powerful.
But I don't think there's ever been a time either that Christian view is less sought after, is less willing to be heard than it is at this point. I mean, it used to be, and I'm not talking during the time when like the moral majority and stuff like that was the big deal, and Christians felt like, you know, they were in control. I'm just talking about just in general conversation wise. I don't think there's an ounce of credibility within Christians anymore. Nobody wants to hear anything about what they have to say.
But I think that's our fault.
I'm not disputing that at all. I just think it's really hard to say or do anything without the vitriol that comes, as a result.
That's true. That's why you got to work at saying it in a way with a degree of humility. To say, look, I have very strong views. I don't think Christians have the opportunity of setting aside their truth. I mean, we didn't make it up. It's just true. And that spills over into politics and spills over into metaphysics and philosophy and almost everything that we do. The most dangerous thing that we face as Christians is the fact that we're right. And we really are right. And that puts us in a position to join the foray with our weapons. And we've done that too much, and we got to stop it. At any rate, we will continue with this discussion. Please take notes. You will be tested on this material. To Steve Brown, etc., and we're talking about self-righteousness, and we're trying to do it without being self-righteous.
Which is hard when you're as right as we are.
Is that even possible?
I mean, it's really hard. Well, it's funny, when we were talking about this in the last segment, you know, I feel like sometimes, you guys tell me what you think about this, that we hold up agreement on a subject as too big of a prize. We make too much of it. What I mean is, if you think back to a couple weeks ago, we had Rusty Wright, and he had something I think he called compassionate apologetics, which is like, look, I have something I would love to convince you of, but first, let me see where we might have some common ground. And it feels like that's something that we could do. So if I'm across the table from Greta Thunberg or some other, wacko environmental person, do I agree we should shut down capitalism for the environment? No, I don't. Okay, so let's back up a step. Are things kind of polluted? Okay, getting warmer. Okay, well, let's back up another step. Should we take care of the world? Yeah. Well, yes. Yes, we should. In fact, instead of punching each other out right now, why don't we go pick up a piece of trash or something together? We have not come to any kind of real agreement from a political point of view, but we could maybe still do something.
You could offer to ride with them on their private jet just to make it more, efficient.
Carpooling.
Yeah.
But if I were you, I wouldn't open it the way you just did by calling her a wacko environmentalist. That probably
you're right.
would end the conversation
Duly
pretty
noted.
quick.
Duly noted.
You could call yourself a wacko unenvironmentalist. Or
Tony Campola and I have done that for years.
Mm-hmm.
We honestly don't agree on a lot that politically at all. And Tony has said, and I've heard him say it 100 times, Steve, you and I both want the same things. We really do. We just think that there's a different way about going about it. But I give you that you want exactly what I want for our country, for our church, for myself, for my family. And you do too with me. We just are talking about different ways to get there. Every time Tony says something like that, the conversation goes further than either one of us ever expected. And the reason we did that television show, well, there were two reasons. We did it for a year, once a week, out of New York. First reason was so we could put our heads together and moon America without pulling our pants down.
The other was gambling debt.
Yeah, right.
You just had to pay some off.
But secondly, we did it, and neither one of us had time to do it because we wanted to demonstrate what we're talking about today. And frankly, there were a couple of times when we didn't, when it got so hot and heated in the discussion that I didn't like Tony at all, and he didn't like me at all. Because we both really believe what we say we believe, and we're both passionate about it. But for the most part, it was discussed. And, the danger is becoming a wuss.
Right. You can't soft sell.
No, you really can't.
What's your core belief, but there's got to be a way.
But there was a time in this country when that was true. When liberals believed in big government because they really were compassionate and cared about the poor And they thought that government could do it better than the church. And there were others who said government, if they touch it, the worst thing, the biggest lie is we're from the government and we're here to help you. No, they're not. It's going to hurt things. And people disagreed honestly about it. I can remember when I was a kid, my father was I'm from a very politically involved family, and they were all Democrats. I even ran my brother's district attorney campaign, and he was a Democrat. And nobody will know how much that cost me. And he won by landslide.
Nice.
I did the media part of it. But I can remember my father saying, once I was a Democrat, as happy as can be. Now I'm a Republican, and I wish Truman were a tree. And then he had laughed. Now, some of you don't even know who Truman was. He was, that'll show you how old. But I can remember my father, a convinced, very strong, my entire family. My mother was a poll judge, as long as I remember. But I can remember when Eisenhower came to our town in North Carolina, and my father taking me down to see our president and putting me on his shoulders so I would be able to see our president. Now, there's some places where fathers are not going to take their children to see our president because they hate our president. They think he's a Nazi, and they think he's trying to destroy civilization as we know it. And if they get a Democrat in, there are Republicans who feel exactly the same way about them.
And, so much of the, even how people come to those conclusions that, well, the Democrats are the greatest help or whatever. I mean, your parents grew up during FDR.
Yeah,
and that was the salvation of the country in their view.
It really was, and it made a difference. Mm-hmm. Because people wanted the same things, the way Tony said. There were just different ways of going about it. But I don't want us to gather around the campfire and sing Kumbaya. That's not an answer either. I mean, there has to be the free and open discussion of real issues and real problems and real people. But there's got to be a better way of doing it than the way we're doing it. And we'll tell you on the other side of the break. You know something? We're well into the Lenten season, and traditionally that was a funny comment you made about the self-righteousness of Ash Wednesday. What did you say?
Well, Jinx was mentioning that there's a church right here in town that's a drive-through. Yeah,
a drive-through
Ash Wednesday service. So it's like going to Starbucks to get your coffee. Just stick your head out the window and get some black stuff on your forehead.
And then go around and let everybody see it, because people will know how religious you are.
Awesome.
And how good. And that violates what Lent is all about.
Good, because I've never done it, and I felt like I was missing something.
Well, I bet Amazon's going to be delivering an Ash Wednesday kit, and that you can do it at home.
There you go.
Thank you, Jeff Bezos.
I think they deliver communion kits, so I'm sure Ash Wednesday is just around the corner.
But when you think about Lent, you think about the example. And Jesus, of course, was a lot more than an example, but when you consider who he was and what he did, it absolutely blows you away. Being in the form of God, he did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped to himself, but he emptied himself, and he became a servant. And maybe that's an attitude that would be the difference when we're talking politically. The good thing about knowing who you are and who you belong to is you don't have to be right anymore. And you don't have to pretend to be good anymore. You really don't. you don't have anything to brag about. That goes out the window, man. You begin to see. I preached this past weekend, and Saturday, people were not looking at their watches. They were shaking them because they thought they were broken.
Not true. I was there, and they were
it was
applauding.
awful, man. I felt like molasses. And a friend of mine, but I want you to know, Sunday morning, same sermon, same preacher, I was taking notes on myself.
I feel cheated.
And and
Get your money back.
Somebody said Saturday night was the best gift that God ever gave you, because at that point you were usable on Sunday morning. Now, I don't want to make too much out of that, but I think we can see places in our lives when we've been confronted at Lent with our sin, when we've examined our lives and realized the people we've hurt and the things that we've said that were divisive and angry and hateful. And as we repent of that and realize and go, oh, God, I didn't know once we see that, then go discuss politics. Once you see how screwed up you really are, and you are, but I'm not, I'm ordained, but once you see that, then you can discuss Trump, and you can discuss shift, and you can discuss policies,
Right.
and you can discuss theology, and you can do it without being a wuss.
Well, I think once you get to that point of you don't have anything to defend or win, it just like, look, here's what I believe. I could be, but if you agree with what I'm saying or not, I don't care. I care about you.
Yeah.
But I don't care about what you. It's irrelevant. You're a child of God. I'm not. That's why I don't ever engage online with political stuff, because I would never offend you online at the expense of being able to offend you in person.
You
don't want to miss that chance.
Yeah, and I only want to offend you with the gospel.
Yeah.
That's really the only thing worth offending you about. Politics, listen, man, let's have a coffee or a beer and have a conversation, but I'm not gonna get heated with you about that. I would rather, if I'm gonna offend you,
let Jesus do it.
I'll offend you with Jesus.
Yeah.
That'd be fine.
You agree with that?
Well, yeah. How could I disagree?
That's kind of like being against motherhood and apple pie, isn't it?
Well, and although there are some points where people are just sort of looking to get offended, even if you want to sort of casually and respectfully discuss, politics. And,
I agree.
sometimes
I find
the
that
political, yeah, watch it. Well, but and sometimes political discussions are important. They
are.
In terms of representing, what really we think can be best for people, or best for an environment in which they can survive and thrive and go forth and be free to practice their religion. And
it's so good, and I agree. What really makes me self-righteous are victims. What really makes me self-righteous are people who are hypersensitive about everything, who bring suit and get a mean lawyer no matter what you do or what you say.
Careful.
And so I'm
in a safe space here.
Because we like being victims, and that makes me so self-righteous. When maybe I ought to listen to my own sermons, you think? That couldn't hurt.
Only the good ones, though. Don't listen to the bad ones where they're shaking their watches.
It is amazing how often you see victims lifted up. Next to people who produce angry, responses and so forth, the other thing is the victim mentality that we seem to be featuring so much.
And it's hard to point that out without being self-righteous about it. I can't tell you how good I felt after saying what I just said about victims. But that brings you to another place. If you're not self-righteous, can you still speak truth? can you, even controversial truth, even divisive truth, even truth that nobody believes in. That's what Jesus did. You can, if you're willing to be crucified. And as I understand the scripture, we're supposed to already be dead. So we're free to do that and speak that truth, to speak it without rancor, without throwing rocks, and without demeaning other people. What do you think?
It reminds me a little bit of the, and I think it's advice you've given to pastors among the many over the years that you've counseled with and supported, but that the pastor ought to be the most repentant person or one of the most repentant people in the congregation, in the church.
I agree. That's from Jack Miller, and he was right on. And the Christian ought to be the most repentant person in his circle of friends and in her neighborhood and in her club and maybe even in her church. Once you become aware of that I'm a nobody, and a poet said this one time, and you're nobody, let's just be quiet about it and go over and have an ice cream cone together. And then I'll tell you where you're wrong, and you can tell me where I'm wrong. Guys, we have another segment coming up, and I realize it hasn't been that wonderful up to this point, but we still have time to fix it. And trust me, you don't want to miss it on the other side of the break. So like Jesus, we're coming back. That hour went by quickly because I was talking about myself and preaching too much. I really didn't mean to do that.
I don't think you were preaching too much. I think it is now time in this last segment. Little altar call. Let's pull up Just As I Am. Just 12 more verses. And let's lean into this.
Yeah, and then we can take up a collection.
Yes.
And Jinx, play the sound effect for the stock donation.
Oh, I was already headed down to rededicate my life to make the Just As I Am stop.
Yeah, your buses will wait.
That's music to George's ears.
Guys, we kid about it a lot, but this is really an important subject. And I honestly believe that Christians have a grand opportunity. We blew it when Bill Clinton blew it because we could have said, that could have been me. But we didn't. We said, how could he have done something like that? But we get opportunities every day when people do bad stuff, when people make mistakes, to cut slack and to identify and then to speak the one thing that we don't give a rip whether we offend people about, and that's Jesus himself. And Jesus can handle himself okay.
I really appreciate your when you were sort of translating the verse in Philippians, let your gentleness be known to all, as be known for cutting slack.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And we don't do it much. I don't do it for Democrats, and they don't do it for me. So we get into and I don't do it for dispensationalists. They don't do it for the Reform people. I don't do it as a Presbyterian to charismatics, and they won't cut slack for me either. And so we end up being a microcosm of the macrocosm of the pagan world. I hope we have fixed it today on this broadcast. Yeah, well, I got to preach on it anyway.
Oh.
Who's going to be here next week?
Next week, John Eldridge will be here.
I'm so excited.
The new book is Get Your Life Back, Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad, which is really a great follow-up to what you were talking about today.
Yeah.
The
You've
world
been
has
reading
gone
that,
mad.
haven't you?
I have been. I'm a huge Eldridge fan, and it starts with like, "Hey guys, we're too busy and too much technology." I'm like, yeah, I mean, duh. I mean,
Yeah, how many people have said that?
yeah. And then, about halfway through now, I'm like, and he hits the good stuff. And you're like, oh, shoot, you got my number again, man. So I'm looking forward to that conversation with John.
So it worked out that he
So
called off
John-
a week.
Yeah.
John Eldridge will be here next week. You don't want to miss a bit of it. Same time, same place. Hope you'll join us. And between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't. And that gives you a wide, wide berth.